Hey, welcome to Dan's Model Works. And we're back at work on our corporate flyers project. And of course, we've got the cover of the Lockheed Vega here. We're also going to be doing more work on the Dassault Falcon 10 as well, which is the private jet. And as you can tell by the mounds of clutter and crap, we are in the clutter zone, basically the regular hobby bench. And you can see I still got the clothespins on our wing. And basically we're going to have to fill. You can see there's a seam that runs all the way along here on the back of the wing. That's all got to be filled in. And the clothespin is basically still on here from when I photographed it. The first thing we've got to do is to make our seats. And then that will enable us to basically wrap up the interior of the Vega and move ahead with this project. So on the lid of this container, I have 6 seats. 3 of them are in the upright position, and the other 3 have been folded down flat. And you can also I've got these L-shaped pieces of plastic. They're just plastic rod that I've bent, basically using a soldering iron. And I don't need to do the sides that go against the walls, because obviously nobody's going to see those. The 3 brackets that go on the sides of the seats that are folded, I'm actually going to be splitting those and folding them even more, because oddly enough, that curved piece there on the real plane, it seems to split at that point. That's where it's hinged. Looks kind of failure prone to me, but that's the way it seems to be. A goal for this particular episode is to get my interior for the Falcon 10 pretty much fully assembled so that I can close up the fuselage halves. Now, the kit recommends, and I agree, that the inside of this should be an ivory or an off-white, kind of a cream color. And that's exactly how I picture this. Now, that kind of color is just terrible for trying to brush paint. So I think I'm just going to be airbrushing all of the floor area here and the bulkheads and that sort of thing, as well as the interior, and then I'm going to brush paint other details. Now, even though I'm not actually going to be putting this in place when I spray, I'll put it in afterwards. This bulkhead here goes in like this. And from the entryway, let's bring it up here. Hopefully, you can see looking at this bulkhead here, you can see there's door detail on the side that faces the entryway. Great. Awesome. We flip it around the other side, and what faces into the cockpit is 3 huge ejector pin marks and no door detail. I don't know how much you're going to be able to see through those tinted windows into the fuselage in the cabin, but I hate this. So I'm going to be sanding off these 3 ejector pin marks, and I'm going to do, as soon as I pick it up, I'm going to put some framing on the door there, because I just don't think this is acceptable, these ejector pin marks and not even outline of the door. So there is our modified part. Basically what I did is I transferred the dimensions of the door from the other side to this side. I scribed the seam in the middle using basically the back of a number 11 blade. And then the sides of the door were just some very fine styrene strip. And I used the same thing to make kind of the latches. If we flip it over, you can see it has some latches on this side. I guess mine are a smidge larger, but you're never going to be looking at both sides at the same time. If you do, you're way more talented than me. So this bit's ready to go in. Part of the preparations for painting the interior was I wanted to mask off the inside of the windows, so that way I wouldn't end up with this tinted panel up against the interior. So what I did, and it didn't work out nearly as well as I was hoping, is I put the masking tape on the outside of the windows, where you can see they're quite clearly, they stand proud. And then my thinking is, oh, that'll be easy to trim around that, and then I'll just peel off the oval, put it on the inside. Well, I used cheap masking tape, expensive masking tape. I used Tamiya masking tape, thinking that one of them was going to be fairly simple to cut evenly. No. Even with an absolutely brand new blade and burnishing the edges, they still came out rather ragged. The saving grace is going to be we're just barely going to be able to see in here anyway, so I'm just going to bite the bullet and go with it. So I'm about to glue these to the inside of the halves, and then I'll peel off the masking tape later. So all of my internal parts, with the exception of the seats, have been given a coat of Model Master sand, which basically has the off-white, kind of a cream color that I was looking for. So the nice thing is when we look in here, I mean, yes, you can still see there's a rectangular shape there, but it's not going to be tinted like it was before. So let's see what it looks like once we get those bits of masking tape off. So there we go. I think this way we're drawing attention to the fact that they're windows, not a basically tinted rectangle. So the floor, I'm going to be painting that a dark brown, just because I figure even on a light interior, they probably would have a darker color on the floor, just for, you know, not showing the dirt. Not that you're going to be that dirty getting into a corporate jet, but still, I imagine that'll probably be about the darkest thing. The seats, I'm going to be using kind of a leathery type color for those, but otherwise, everything else is going to be very light inside here. So I've got my floor painted here, and I've painted the bottom of the pilot and co-pilot seats black. The console here in the middle, a light gray color. And this is the connecting door to the cockpit. I've painted the door, I believe that was natural wood. I also painted the side panels under the windows that same color. And I had to keep reminding myself perfection isn't really required here because we're barely going to see any of this stuff. And as well, I've got all of my seats painted and ready to be glued in, so assembly can begin of the interior. Here's the instrument panel, and they don't give you a decal for it, but there's lots of detail there. I'm doubtful as to whether or not we're ever going to see it again once we get it together, but it's done anyway. So that is our interior for the Falcon 10 all put together. Cockpit turned out quite nice. Fortunately, we are probably never going to see any of this again. It does fit inside the fuselage really, really nice, but that's what you pretty much expect from a Japanese kit, is that everything is going to fit like a glove. There's the fuselage halves just brought together temporarily. And the cockpit looks like it has pretty good visibility, although, like I said before, we will probably lose most of that behind the tinted windows. We can look in and see the seats. You can see there's something going on in there. And I don't know if it'll help if I put the flash on here. So that's our interior glued in place. And I was very careful to make sure that our front landing gear bay lined up correctly and that it was fairly solidly glued in. We wouldn't want a gap in there. Before I permanently glue this thing together, and I'm going to make sure that I should just be able to slot the cockpit windows in. So that's the last thing I want, is to not be able to put that in. Well, shoot, that just almost kind of fell into place. So I don't see anything keeping us from getting the fuselage of this puppy put together. It took, I would say, a moderate amount of clamping to get the fuselage halves together. I've certainly glued together far, far worse. I needed to put a fair amount of pressure right here to get this to close up. The nose required a little bit of pressure. You can see there's a very small step side to side, but that's nothing that a little bit of sanding won't take care of. Unfortunately, there's very few panel lines on this, so we're not going to lose a whole lot of detail that way. So the Falcon 10 is definitely going together pretty well. Now let's get back to working on the Vega. So there is our passenger seats in, or at least half of them. The other half I chose to put in the folded up position, because basically you can't get to the first or second row seats forward unless you fold up at least one side of the seats. So I want to say something about the sides of the seats in this particular aircraft. I think I made them maybe about 10 or 15% too small. I was going based on the size of the pilot's seat up here. And when you compare them to the ones in the Falcon 10, they're huge. At least the ones for the passengers. The pilot seat is probably maybe about 10 or 15% bigger than these ones. So I'm not going to tear these out and redo them. I suppose, like I said, I think I made them maybe about 10 or 15% too small. Basically, I didn't want to overwhelm the inside of the aircraft. I didn't want it to look too busy. So, but I'm going to leave it the way it is. Especially in the case of the Falcon, you can't even see the interior once it's all together. And even this one, you're just only going to be able to see hints of the interior. So I haven't glued the fuselage together yet, but you can see what we're going to see through the door and the windows. So the windows won't even be nearly this clear, of course. But I think I'm going to bite the bullet and I'm going to glue this part of the fuselage together as well. And part of the reason for that is I don't know what's been going on with me for the last, 2 and a bit weeks. But I've just been chomping at the bit to work on this and other projects. But I just seem to be super, super tired. And all I want to do is nap. So every day I've had plans to work on this project, and every day I end up being like, oh, geez, the whole day went by and I accomplished nothing. So I really want to get some forward traction on this. So better for worse, I plunged ahead and glued together the fuselage sides. As I said earlier, I think the seats were a little undersized, but I'm trying to get a good angle here in the light so you can see that the seats are in there. But basically this project is suffering, and all of my modeling in the latter half of July was suffering from just can't quite seem to sit down at the hobby bench. So I took the plunge and I glued the fuselage together because I really want to get this particular episode up. There's a little bit of a gap here. I might still try to scoosh that to close that up. I think I can probably glue that and hand clamp it for 20 or 30 minutes while the glue sets up. At least we can, so far, look down on the cockpit, which is where most of the work went into this so far. We'll see how it looks once we get the canopy in place. So, Thanks for watching, and until next time, just keep on modeling.